Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of our WCN Fluencer. I'm your host, Christopher McClellan, and I have a very special guest today who's going to talk about how she is untangling Alzheimer's and dementia. Marianne, welcome.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me on the show again. It's a pleasure.
It is great to see you, great to have you a part of the Whole Care Network, and you are certainly a WC influencer. But tell our listeners a little bit about our listeners and our viewers now that we're going big time with video.
Yeah.
Tell everybody a little bit about your background and why this mission of untangling Alzheimer's and dementia is so important to you.
Okay, Chris. I'm a nurse. I'm a registered nurse. I started in the nursing field back in 1990, and my very first job was working in a nursing facility caring for people who had Alzheimer's and dementia, and that really left a mark on me. I just found that I had a heart for that work and a heart for people living with dementia, and I also had some relatives of my own also who had the condition. So that's always been something throughout my career as a nurse that I tended to gravitate toward. And I wrote a book about it, a novel, Blue Hydrangeas, an Alzheimer's Love Story. You can see the book cover behind my shoulder. And that led me to do some advocacy work with some other women who had also written books on Alzheimer's, and we created ALZAuthors, which is a global community of authors writing about Alzheimer's and dementia. And our goal is to raise awareness of dementia and to provide quality resources for people who are caring for their loved ones. And that's how we got started. And the podcast became a natural extension of that. We decided to use storytelling in an oral way in order to get the messages across, and met up with you. I think you were the one who gave us the idea and prodded us to consider doing a podcast, which we finally managed to put together. So that's what we're doing. We interview a new author just about every week, and they share their story, and they share insight and information for people who are caring for their loved ones.
I actually remember our first conversation way back when about doing the podcast, because I was so impressed by your mission about sharing stories and how important it is for not only the story sharer but the story receiver to get the message from somebody that they know that they can trust because they've been in those trenches.
Exactly. You're getting information and some advice from what we call the experts. And these are the people that are caring day in and day out for their loved ones, sometimes without support. And they know a lot more than, say, your neurologist or your gerontologist, who might know all of the science, but don't know how to handle things at home. So
Right.
That's what we rely on, are those stories. And people realize when they hear somebody else's story, maybe it's similar to their own, that if this person made it, I can make it too.
Well, and I think the other thing that is so important about what you're doing is you're bringing people together from around the globe to deal with a disease that is very insidious. But when you can share those, what I'd like to say, that information and referral, which is so important, from people that are in the trenches, we get a little bit better understanding of each other, and we find out, that we're really not that much different. We're just trying to take care of the person that is entrusted with our care.
Exactly. That's the whole point of it, is to see that you are not alone and that there are other people who are also going through the same thing you're dealing with right now. And we all have a different set of circumstances, but in the end, we're all alike, and we can draw support from each other.
You've learned over this period of time that you may not have known when you started this wonderful program.
We started it in 2015. So we're celebrating our 7th anniversary coming up in June. And when we started, there were 3 of us. And I was more of a professional type caregiver. I really hadn't had any personal experience at that time, which would change in that first year. But my 2 partners, they did. They both cared for 2 parents at the same time. So we we were all educators and readers. We were the type who would, if we had a question about something, we went to a book. We went to the library, or we went on Amazon. We looked for a book to give us the information that we wanted. We thought that everybody would. So when we quickly learned, after promoting all of these books and authors and kind of like stagnating a bit, that maybe that's not really accurate, and that caregivers, they don't have time to look for books or to sit down and read a book. And that was one of the reasons why we started the podcast, because we realized that if you don't have time to sit and read a book, and if you do that, then you are not able to do other things while you do that. That is how your focus is consumed with reading a book. It stops, like time stops, because you can't do more than one thing when you're reading a book, visually. But when you're listening to a podcast or even listening to an audiobook, now you can listen and you can do something else. So if you're doing laundry or dishes or cooking or driving or just sitting around waiting, at the doctor's office or something like that, you can use your time to hear a story or to learn, to get the information that you want. So that's one of the big things that we learned. And even knowing that and working to that end, I have recently come to the revelation that the issue is the target audience, who is the caregiver,
Yes.
for a loved one with dementia or any illness, really, that is so consuming that even having 10 or 15 minutes a day to look for information is a challenge. And I think it's something that is across the board in this space. Everybody has great message or a product or a service to deliver, but trying to get that person's attention and to explain yourself to them or to show them is extremely difficult. And I know from my own experience caring for my own parents that I was just putting out little fires all the time and running from one task to the next, and didn't always have time to even say, oh, I have like 15 minutes, let me listen to something, or let me sit down and go on Amazon, see if I can find some kind of a resource that's going to help me. So it's really hard, and it's sad, because we know that what we have to offer will make a difference in the lives of these caregivers, but they're like trapped, I think. They've just got this time and attention issue. By the time they might be able to sit and listen in the evening, they might just be so exhausted that they just can't. So that's what I've learned.
And oftentimes we're searching for resources right we're in the middle of a crisis, and which is stressful in and of itself, and to be able to hear the resources and hear the stories, it personalizes it. And I think it, I know you've probably heard me say this numerous times. It's through story sharing where diversity meets the road to collaborate on a common cause. And there's just something about sharing one story that is cathartic. It personalizes it in a sense, but the receiver understands, especially somebody that's new to caregiving, are new to dealing with dementia or Alzheimer's, that they're not alone. And sometimes that's just half the battle.
Yeah, we're trying really hard to eliminate the silence and stigma that surrounds a dementia diagnosis, because there are many cases where, it's not even spoken of outside the family. There's some kind of, there is stigma attached. It's a brain disease, it's a mental disease, and people sometimes just want to hide that. So even just making that statement, stating to somebody, well, my husband, he has cognitive impairment, or he has Alzheimer's, or he has memory problems. it's hard to break through that barrier. But when you do, then you may discover that the person you're speaking to, they have the same thing going on or at their house.
And there is some comfort when you know that you're not the only one dealing with this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're going to find allies in unlikely places.
Right.
So that's another reason to be open, because usually people, they cluster around those that are close to them or in their immediate, circle of friends. And they may not have any idea what you're even talking about. But when you extend yourself to a support group, whether it's online or in person, or, other people that maybe you don't really know too well, you will find somebody that may have answers for you, or at least can guide you or provide you with support. It may not be the person that you are thinking it could be.
So if you were to...
And you can't fault people who help.
If you were to have a crystal ball and you could wave your hands around the crystal ball, and you had one wish that you could grant to somebody that is just experiencing caregiving, especially for an Alzheimer's or dementia patient, what would that crystal ball say to that person?
I just wish that people, when they're giving a diagnosis, received adequate information and resources as to what they need to do next. And that seems to be a missing piece for most caregivers. They leave the doctor office, and we'll have to dump it on their doorstep, and they've just been told that mom has Alzheimer's, we'll see in 6 months or whatever, and they don't even know the very first thing to do, and there's a million things to do. So I always say confusion begets confusion. You have a loved one who is suffering from a brain disease that causes them to be confused about everything. But then their confusion now creates confusion within the family or with the caregiver, because now that person is confused as to what am I going to do about this, and how can I fix this, and how can we manage this? We don't have resources. There are resources in my community. What personal resources does my parent have? Or do I have? Can I afford to be a caregiver? Where will she go? How will we find people to come in and help us? There's just like so much, and people just become paralyzed by it. So like I say, putting out one fire at a time, instead of being proactive. So I would wish that people would be given a set of tools that said, call this person and do this. Fill out this paperwork, bring it here. This is a good resource for you. Read this book. Listen to this podcast. We're trying to put that together, but, we're just a small group of seven.
And just one of our goals as we've talked over the years is to try to capture that person who is new to caregiving or new to dealing with Alzheimer's or dementia, to kind of prepare them for what lies ahead in their journey. And it comes back full circle to telling your story, because that's how you started out, sharing your information and your resources. So, Marianne, you are certainly a WC influencer, and I can't thank you enough for joining me today. But before we go, let all of our viewers and listeners know how they can find ALZAuthors on the internet.
The best place to go is to ALZAuthors.com. It's ALZ, short for Alzheimer's, authors, AUTHORS.com. And that's our website. And you will see all of our authors' stories on our blog. And we also have a number of resources. You can find the podcast there. We have videos. We have a bookstore, all categorized for you according to the dementia type or the relationship. So if it were caring for your mom, you would find books that were written about that. And we even have a place for you to submit to have your own book or your own blog reviewed to become a part of our collection as well, because we are constantly seeking out new resources. We get at least one a week So, and now we're also looking at film and podcasts as well. So we have a lot of resources to offer you. So I often think about the caregiver who's, caring for her parent or maybe her husband, and she has 10 minutes to spare and she wants to find something that she can hold on to. Don't go to Amazon. Go to ALZAuthors.com and you'll be able to quickly get your hands on something that is going to be worth your time.
Authentic, credible, and true to life resources. And of course, the second best place to find ALZAuthors is on the Whole Care Network at wholecarenetwork.com/ALZAuthors.
Yes.
And be sure to subscribe to ALZAuthors Untangling Dementia and Alzheimer's, wherever you get your favorite podcast. Marianne, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris. Always good to see you. And thanks for everything you do for the
Thank you.
caregivers with the Whole Care Network.